In 1955, the average housewife worked 55 hours per week inside the home. Not because she was slow. The work never ended. Tasks we've completely forgotten were non-negotiable weekly duties. Here are 15 chores every housewife in the 1950s did that almost no one does anymore. Number 1. Wringer washing and line drying turned laundry into a full-day ordeal. Even as automatic washers slowly appeared in showrooms, half of American homes still relied on the hand-cranked wringer model well into the late 1950s. Laundry day began before sunrise, sorting and soaking clothes in tubs, then feeding each heavy, sopping load, sometimes 10 to 15 pounds at a time, through the wringer by hand. The rollers squeezed out water, but posed a real hazard. Pinched fingers and bruised knuckles were common, with some women recalling crushed bones from a moment's distraction. After rinsing, every piece was hauled outside to the clothesline, where drying depended entirely on the weather. Rain meant delays, and damp clothes lingered for days. Oral histories describe hours of back and arm strain, with the constant rhythm of cranking and hanging filling 7 to 10 hours. As one 1957 diary put it, "Sunday was laundry day, wringer pinched fingers, but sheets dried crisp in the breeze." In second place, ironing, everything demanded 3 to 4 hours every single week. The routine stretched far beyond shirts and dresses to sheets, pillowcases, table linens, even handkerchiefs and underwear, all of which had to be pressed flat and crisp. Most homes relied on heavy steam irons, weighing 4 to 8 pounds, which meant hours of standing in one spot, guiding the hot metal back and forth over every seam and fold. The repetition strained shoulders and wrists, while the constant heat brought the risk of steam burns and scorched fabric. Home economics classes and magazines insisted on a polished look, sharp collars, smooth sheets, and not a wrinkle in sight. Diaries from the era mention the monotony of this task, with one reader in 1954 recalling, "Ironed handkerchiefs too, hours standing, but collars stayed sharp." Ironing was more than a finishing touch. It was a weekly test of endurance, shaping the expectations for a spotless, orderly home. Third on our list, beating rugs brought a burst of outdoor labor to the weekly routine. Rugs and carpets, too bulky for the wringer washer and impossible to vacuum deeply with mid-century machines, had to be carried outside, often by one determined woman, sometimes with a child or neighbor lending a hand. Once draped over a sturdy clothesline or metal frame, the real work began. Using a special rug beater or even a broom, each mat was struck repeatedly, sending thick clouds of dust billowing into the air. The process demanded strong arms and a steady rhythm, as every thump loosened months of grit and pollen embedded in the fibers. Magazine checklists from the era listed rug beating as a must for a truly clean home, while oral histories recall the spectacle. Dragged rugs to the yard weekly, dust everywhere, but the house smelled fresh. The physicality of this chore, hoisting, swinging, breathing in dust, underscored just how much housework played out between four walls and the backyard, connecting the rhythms of indoor order to the changing seasons outside. Number 4. Polishing silver brought a different kind of pressure to the weekly routine, a task less about brute strength and more about upholding a certain standard. Every week, real silverware and serving pieces came out of the drawer for a thorough hand buffing. Tarnish could form in just a few days, turning prized forks and teapots dull and blotchy. Housewives spent 30 to 45 minutes rubbing each piece with chemical polish, the cloth quickly turning black as the residue lifted away. The fumes from the polish stung eyes and irritated skin, but a gleaming table was seen as a mark of pride and hospitality. Good housekeeping checklists made it clear spotless silver was non-negotiable for company or Sunday dinner. The effort was more than surface deep. It signaled a family's status, even as the chore itself left hands raw. As one 1956 interview recalled, silver every week, tarnish fast, polish fumes stung eyes. Number 5. Waxing floors meant hours spent on hands and knees, scrubbing every inch of hardwood or linoleum until the surface gleamed. The job started with hauling heavy metal buckets, sometimes holding up to 80 pounds of wax and water, across the kitchen or living room. Housewives knelt for long stretches, rubbing wax into the grain with cloths or pads, then buffing by hand, aiming for a mirror-like shine that reflected the week's effort. Solvent fumes filled the air, making eyes water and leaving a slippery, dangerous surface until the wax dried. This routine wasn't about vanity. A spotless, polished floor was a visible sign of order and care, especially when company came calling. The strain on knees and lower back grew with each session, but the expectation never faded. As one regional oral history recalls, on her knees waxing floors, her back ached, but the floors gleamed for company. Number 6. Starching clothes was a weekly ritual that added an extra layer of work to the laundry routine. After hours spent washing and ironing, housewives reached for starch, either mixing it by hand or, by the mid-1950s, spraying it from new aerosol cans. Shirts, collars, and even children's dresses were stiffened to hold a perfect crease, with crispness seen as a sign of respectability and care. Starch made fabric tougher to press, requiring more time and muscle to achieve the smooth, rigid look that magazines and home economics classes insisted upon. Stiff collars and cuffs weren't just about appearance. They marked a family as disciplined and proper in the eyes of neighbors and guests. As one curriculum guide from the era put it, starched collars weekly, stiff as boards for dad's shirts. This weekly step was not optional. It was part of a broader expectation that every detail of the wardrobe reflected the order of the home. Number 7. Defrosting the refrigerator was a weekly ordeal in homes without frost-free technology. In the 1950s, most families still relied on older models that quickly built up thick layers of ice inside the freezer compartment. To keep food cold and prevent spoiled groceries, housewives had to unplug the fridge, empty every shelf, and chip away at stubborn ice using a spatula or even a butter knife. The process was slow and risky because sharp tools slipped easily and cuts or bruised knuckles were common. Melted ice pooled across the kitchen floor, demanding extra time for mopping and drying. Appliance manuals warned that too much frost would make the motor run longer, driving up electric bills and risking breakdowns. Frost-free refrigerators only became widespread in the 1960s, so manual defrosting was non-negotiable for most of the decade. As one 1955 oral history recalls, they defrosted the fridge weekly and chipped ice for hours. This hidden maintenance chore reveals how technology lag forced extra labor and real hazards into the heart of the weekly routine. In 8th place, baking from scratch was a weekly anchor in the kitchen of the 1950s. Every loaf of bread, every pie, started with raw ingredients, measured, sifted, and mixed by hand. The process demanded real muscle, kneading dough for 10, sometimes 20 minutes until it turned smooth and elastic. Most recipes called for multiple rises, stretching the task over 2 or 3 hours and filling the house with the warm, yeasty scent of baking. In the summer, the oven heat made the kitchen nearly unbearable, but skipping homemade bread or dessert was not an option. Store-bought loaves and pre-made pie crusts were rare luxuries, so baking became both a family economy and a weekly tradition. Burned fingers and flour-dusted aprons were part of the ritual. As one 1958 diary recalled, baked bread weekly, knees in flour, oven heat exhausting. This routine did not just feed a family, it set the pace for the week and shaped the very rhythm of home life. Number 9. Cleaning the oven by hand brought some of the harshest chemicals into the weekly routine. Baked-on grease and food spills demanded heavy-duty scrubbing, and most oven cleaners in the 1950s relied on sodium hydroxide, lye, at concentrations strong enough to burn skin in seconds. Without warning labels or safety standards, housewives often worked barehanded, breathing in choking fumes that stung lungs and eyes. Gloves were rare, and kitchen windows stayed closed in winter, trapping caustic vapors indoors. Consumer reports from the decade documented chemical burns and respiratory irritation, but the expectation remained: a spotless oven ready for the next round of baking. The job did not just take muscle, it carried real health risks, long before government safety rules arrived in the 1970s. As one 1950s letter recalled, oven scrubbing with lye produced fumes that burned lungs weakly. This hidden hazard stood in sharp contrast to the warmth of homemade bread, reminding us how much physical and chemical labor went into keeping a mid-century kitchen running. Number 10. Mending and darning stitched thrift and care into every week. Before fast fashion and cheap replacements, a torn hem or a hole in a sock meant reaching for the sewing basket, not the trash bin. Housewives spent an hour or two each week repairing worn elbows, reattaching buttons, and darning socks, threading a needle back and forth under the lamplight, often after supper when the rest of the house was quiet. The work demanded steady hands and sharp eyes, straining vision and patience as tiny stitches closed up fraying seams. Home economics guides taught these techniques as a matter of pride and necessity, and nothing was wasted if it could be mended. Oral histories recall mothers sitting by the radio darning socks weekly, with nothing thrown out. It was a small but constant act of economy and affection. In a world where every item counted, this quiet, repetitive chore was a reminder of both resourcefulness and the intimate labor that held a household together. Number 11. Washing windows demanded both patience and nerve. Each week, housewives tackled every pane, inside and out, armed with a bucket of vinegar and a stack of old newspapers. The vinegar cut through grime without streaks, while the newspaper's texture polished glass to a shine that met the era's strict standards for curb appeal. For homes with multiple stories or tall picture windows, this chore meant hauling out a heavy wooden ladder and climbing to precarious heights, often with no one nearby to steady the rungs. Magazine checklists from the 1950s made clear streaks or missed spots were not just cosmetic flaws. They signaled neglect to neighbors and guests alike. Safety was an afterthought. Slips and falls were a real risk, but the pressure to present a spotless home outweighed caution. As one scheduled testimonial recounted, windows were washed weekly with vinegar, and high panes were reached carefully. In a time when first impressions started at the front walk, sparkling windows were as important as polished silver or waxed floors. Number 12. Polishing furniture brought a weekly shine to every wood surface in the house. This chore went beyond a quick dusting. Housewives applied solvent-based wax or polish to tables, chairs, and cabinets, then buffed each piece by hand until the grain gleamed. Many popular formulas in the 1950s included Dubin tetrachloride, a chemical now recognized as hazardous, but then prized for its ability to dissolve grime and leave a flawless finish. The fumes filled the air, sometimes causing headaches or dizziness, while hours of rubbing left hands aching and raw. Good housekeeping guides insisted on this step as essential for a well-kept home, warning that dull or dusty wood signaled neglect. The effort covered every room, from dining tables to bedroom dressers, with the expectation that each surface would reflect the week's labor. As one home economics script recalled, furniture waxed weekly meant wood glowed like new, but my hands stung from the polish. Number 13. Scrubbing the front stoop stood out as a weekly ritual that played out in full view of the neighborhood. Concrete steps and porches gathered dust, muddy footprints, and the marks of passing seasons, holding on to grime that a quick sweep could not budge. Housewives knelt on cold, often rough concrete, scrubbing with stiff brushes and buckets of soapy water. The process was hard on the knees, leaving skin red and sometimes abraded, especially in colder months when the water stung against bare hands. More than just a cleaning task, this was a performance of pride and diligence, with neighbors watching from their own windows and porches. A spotless stoop sent a message here was a home cared for, and a family that met the standards of the street. One suburban oral history recalls how people scrubbed the stoop on hands and knees while neighbors watched. This weekly effort kept the home's entrance bright, while quietly reinforcing the social pressures that shaped mid-century domestic life. Number 14. Emptying drip pans was a chore that rarely made it into magazine checklists, but it was essential for keeping the kitchen sanitary. Most 1950s refrigerators, especially those without automatic defrost, had a shallow metal tray tucked beneath or behind the appliance. Week after week, these pans caught meltwater from defrosting ice and, in some models, greasy runoff from the motor. Left unattended, the stagnant water quickly turned foul, growing mold and attracting pests. The job itself was awkward and unpleasant, sliding out the sticky pan, dumping the smelly liquid, and scrubbing away the greasy film in a cramped corner of the kitchen floor. Appliance manuals warned that skipping this step could lead to odors or even a broken refrigerator, but it was easy to forget because the pan was hidden out of sight. Oral histories recall descriptions like emptied drip pans under the fridge, greasy and smelly, a weekly chore. For many, it was a small but telling example of how much invisible labor went into keeping a mid-century kitchen truly clean. And finally, in first place, cooking every meal from scratch filled more hours than any other single chore in the 1950s home. 3 full meals every day started with raw ingredients, peeling potatoes, chopping onions, mixing dough, and simmering stews for hours on the stove. There were no shortcuts, frozen dinners and takeout were rare, so everything from bread to pie crusts was made by hand. The kitchen became a second workplace with heavy pots to lift, endless dishes to wash, and recipes that demanded constant attention. Women's Bureau studies put meal preparation at 20 to 25 hours a week, a figure confirmed by diary entries that outline breakfast, lunch, and dinner as daily events, not quick fixes. The rhythm of the household revolved around the next meal, and the expectation was clear: hot food served on time, every single day. As one 1950s diary recalls, 3 meals from scratch, pause weekly, no shortcuts. The 1950s housewife worked harder physically than most realize, without the appliances we take for granted. These chores have been erased from memory. Which surprised you most? Let me know in the comments. Across all 15 chores, one truth is clear. Mid-century home life demanded relentless, unseen effort. These routines reveal a world where every comfort came from physical labor, not machines. The housewife of the 1950s worked harder physically than most realize, without the appliances we take for granted. These chores have been erased from memory. Which surprised you most? Let me know in the comments.